You see me okay?
Yes, indeed. I'd like to welcome you to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth.
I can't hear you well at all.
We're live, Neil. You want to maybe check that offline?
What's that?
You may want to check your connection offline.
Yeah.
Okay. Chap, how are you?
All is well.
Good. Before we even get started, one thing I wanted to do, since we have you and you're starting off, it must be for a reason. If you would be so kind as to bless us with prayer. Is that all right with you?
Yes, sir. For you.
All right. Come on with it.
All right. Father, as we approach the altar, all heads bowed and eyes closed, I'd like to thank you for this time of fellowship and gathering together of some great people in Baltimore. And I pray that we do this time together and fuel the conversation. Amen.
Good deal. Neil, how's your sound there? Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine. Can you still hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Good man.
So we've also been joined by, well, let's just go around the horn. Chap, why don't you give us your full title so everybody will know why you were blessing us with prayer?
I'm Chaplain David Lovelace, better known as Chap. I'm a volunteer chaplain for Baltimore City communities through the police department.
Good deal. Neil?
Hey, Donnie. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show. Neil Dubovsky with Dubo Law. I am a personal injury attorney, practices in Baltimore County, and have been lucky to know Donnie now for a few years and be a semi-regular participant on his shows, which are always fantastic.
Good deal. All the way from Atlanta, Morocco Coleman. How you doing, Sarge?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Good, good, good. You want to introduce yourself? And please don't forget the book.
Morocco Coleman, Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. Retired assistant director for the Georgia Department of Labor Office of Veterans Programs. I also chair a veterans committee on the Congressional Black Caucus Veterans Brain Trust in Washington, D.C. And I am a veterans advocate here in the city of Atlanta.
Good deal. And Yvette Minor Kane, introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kivette Minor Kane, your financial liberation expert at Mari Moore Life LLC here in Greenbelt, Maryland. I guide women on their journey to self-sufficiency by teaching them how to manage their money without losing their minds.
Okay. Now, I think we have one audio here. Is that Maurice Tates? Can you hear us, Maurice? Yeah, so he's got it just a second. So, Neil, why don't you bring us up to speed on the latest with the Capitol from your perspective?
From my perspective, so the latest is I just heard that they're about to introduce articles of impeachment. Is that what you're talking about?
Hey, from your perspective, counselor.
So, I'm still processing and digesting what happened on Wednesday, as I think is true for a lot of people. It was among the saddest days I can remember, and certainly the saddest days in America that I can remember since 9/11. And in some ways, 9/11 was its own tragedy, but in some ways this was worse because it was self-inflicted. And it was something that I think if certain people had stood up and spoken more loudly earlier, we could have prevented. This was tragically inevitable, I think, looking back. And I think now it becomes a question of how we deal with it moving forward. I think I just read that they're thinking about putting forward articles of impeachment as early as Monday in the House. Whether or not that makes its way to the Senate and through a trial and he gets removed from office in the next 12 days, I have my doubts and my concerns. I think more likely there should be pressure put on him to resign. I think any reasonable person looking at this should be able to say that this man has no business continuing to be president for the next 12 days because of the unmitigated damage that he could do during that period. So I'm sad, but I'm also hopeful that, we can move past this and that we got through it without it being a lot worse than it could have been, I guess is the overall point.
Good deal. We've just been joined by Alexis Coats of AlexisCoats.com. How are you, Alexis?
Hey, Donnie, how are you, buddy?
We're good. Thank you for joining us. Also, Reverend Jerome Stevens. Reverend Jerome Stevens is an employee of U.S. Senator Cardin, correct?
That is correct, sir. I am the Community Outreach Director for the Senior Senator for the state of Maryland, United States Senator Ben Cardin.
Well, clearly, sir, your perspective takes precedence. Where are we now?
I came on late, and you're talking about as it relates to the recent incident of the terrorist act, domestic terrorists, those thugs. At the present time, there is a debate going on with regard to whether or not to move with one, whether or not there's only one or two options as you think about with the president. That's number one. Whether or not the cabinet elect to pull together and seek for his resignation, and secondly, is whether or not there are impeachment proceedings. Keep in mind, impeachment proceedings. There's a timeline on that also. The concern is whether or not there's enough time for the House to vote on it, and then once they vote on it, then there must be a trial. That trial will have to take place in the Senate, and whether or not some of those rules will be, whether or not they will carry do with some of those rules or suspend some of the rules. That is the question right now. As it relates to the lack of security, as you all might be aware, many of the people that was responsible for the security of the Capitol complex, which is fall under Capitol Police, not Washington D.C. Police, but the Capitol Police. Many of those individuals, the chief will be resigning, effective later on this month, as well as both sergeant at arms for the Senate has already resigned or will be resigning as in both the House and the Senate. That's where we are with those situations as we look at things as they occur now. And also, since we are now beginning to take somewhat control of the Senate, there will be also a situation where most of the Senate and the Democrats will have more members on most of the committees, as well as the vast majority of the senators who will perhaps might have been the ranking member on the committees such as small business, finance, environmental public works, and so on. They now will become chairpersons of those committees. So that in Senator Cardin's position, it is a likelihood he now will become chairman of the small business committee, as well as have greater influence on finance committee, as well as the environmental and public works committee, which will deal with a lot of infrastructure bills. Also, it will give a clear advantage to the incoming administration of President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris to do and move their agenda forward more quickly, as opposed to the roadblocks that may have happened with the Republican senators in charge. Please note, even though you have everybody elected, the Senate is ran on a tradition of rules. And those rules also dictates whoever gets the most. They controls the agenda. So that's why it's so key. And I was just so excited. I got up, I was telling Sister Paula, my wife, that I got up like 3 o'clock in the morning when I saw that Reverend Warnock has won. I was just so excited. Got up, child, and got on the computer typing and everything. And then we have all of this mess that happened with these things. And of course, as President Biden quite noted, that's why it gives me hope for this administration. He said himself, if it was Black Lives Matter, just think how this would have happened. If someone was looked like me, of course, I couldn't scale that wall because I'm too fat and out of shape. But nevertheless, I would have been shot scaling those walls. So that's where we are right now, and I'm just so glad and hopeful that after January 20th, things will be moving toward more of a reconciliation for the community, as well as a greater hope for the beloved community.
Good deal. Anyone have any questions for Reverend Stevens? Because I'm sure he has a busy day ahead of him. One question I have for you, is
Go ahead, Pat.
were you there going down?
Big Party, will you repeat that or restate that, sir?
Were you there when the takeover, the act of sedition was taking place?
No, I was not there. I was in the safety of my home. Prior to the incident, we was advised not to come anywhere near the Capitol on January the 6th, as well as we have already, even before that, on that same day, we were advised not to come anywhere near the Capitol on January the 20th. Therefore, if we was advised, we know there should have been much planning involved to prevent what happened on January the 6th.
Yeah, and that has to do with my question about Senator Ben Cardin. Was he there? Obviously, meeting with the Congress. And what are his feelings and his response to the events that happened?
Senator Cardin was there, as well as most other members of Congress was in the chambers when everything happened. They was led to a secure building, a room rather, within the complex, which has always been in plan that is an undisclosed location where they can continue the work of the people. His thoughts about that it was totally that unprepared. Don't know how that the security system broke down and allowed people to come in. Do not know what happened for the breakdown, because as I again previously stated in my statement earlier, we was advised of this earlier, that there might be trouble. Therefore, do not come in. Do not come near the Capitol. So therefore, as someone has indicated, and I'm just using this as perhaps conjecture, that perhaps there might have been someone in cahoots with the executive office to say either stand down or use resistance. These are good people. You don't have to hit them across the head. They good people. They don't look like Jerome. They good people. So I would assume that may have, there's some concern about that. And at the current time, people who was pictured, because they was bold, no mask, no camouflage other than the military camouflage. They are now using face imagery to try to locate these people, to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law.
Absolutely. So my question then is, if we understand that you guys have received these warnings and they should have been on high alert in the process, were there other decisions being made by Congress that would have been deterred by this event, aside from just the elections counts being conducted?
I don't know whether or not what could have been deterred. As I have recalled speaking with a member of Congress, I say this gentleman is trying to do a coup, and nobody is using the word coup. And that's what this was all for, that temporary coup. If you look at the definition of coup, it's a sudden, violent attack on government trying to take control. And that's what happened. And I don't know why nobody, Democrat or Republican, use that word of saying we may have an attempted coup. Just think about that. If this was a third world country, our intelligence community, our military would have been on alert. They would have been sending people in the area, as well as to back those individuals in Pacific countries to avoid a coup, or sometime to help with a coup. So that's why I say this is Jerome Stevens' personal opinion. Why no one used the word coup?
And why didn't they use the word killed? For a long time, we thought there was one person killed. But for hours, I'd listened to CBS News and they said a woman was shot and she died. No, she was killed. Now we find out that there was as many as 5 people killed.
Well, the woman who died had made plans for I believe she was a I don't know her occupation, but nevertheless, she had made a decision to come there to storm. That's what they use, storm the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, she was shot in trying with her attempt to storm the Capitol.
Good deal. Let's get some other people a chance to chime in here. Chaplain Dave, what's been your perspective as a chaplain, Baltimore City Police? Can you relate to this at all? What are your thoughts?
I usually pay attention to what's in front of me, but this because it's so huge, it was in front of me yesterday a lot. And talking with people on the street and just people in my sphere of influence, man, there's a lot of mixed feelings and everything. I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, in my mind, is like, you know, was this a test run to see how the nation's going to respond to a bigger threat or a second push on the Capitol? Send in the fodder and see what it looks like in response for something bigger. Is it like the Wizard of Oz, like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain? All this is going on. While this is going on, what's going on behind the scenes that we're not paying attention to because the news is pointing us at all this, chaos. I don't know what to say about a lot of it because I wasn't there, but from what I've seen, it's just a lot of chaos and a lot of misled and misinformed people that are just acting. I can't even find words to describe it. It's just unbelievable something like this would happen in 2020. I think one thing that I'm inspired by as a Baltimore City resident is that it's such an absurd event happening right now in historically and just in current events that it's getting people to pay attention to what's going on. So you got guys that are normally don't really pay attention to maybe like national current events or things on a bigger scale. They're just worried about what's going on in the corner. Now they're paying attention and they're researching stuff. They're looking stuff up. They're like, I got kids in the street who are like, what's the 25th Amendment? And they're looking that up and they're learning about it. So I think at least one positive thing I can say, because I always try to bring positive to the table, is that people are educating themselves, they're researching, they're trying to figure out what's going on and how to fix it. Where before they might not have paid attention. Everyone's paying attention now.
Morocco, are you paying attention? I mean, what's been your perspective? You're the veteran. You're the U.S. veteran on the line.
Well, I'm in agreement with the chaplain. You remember yesterday when we discussed some of these issues, one of the things that I said was, we don't know if this is a trial run, a soft probe to see where the weaknesses are, where the military is set up, where the police is set up, where the capital city police is set up. And whether that's true or not, we did all see yesterday that all those systems failed. And, we also talked yesterday, and we had a couple of attorneys, and they were saying, we brought up the 25th Amendment and we brought up impeachment. And the consensus was that those type of actions will take a period of time. And we only got 12 to 13 days. So that wouldn't be a viable look-see with the 25th or impeachment. And let's try to see possibly if he would resign. Well, we know without a doubt he's not going to resign. And so it flashed me back to Ronald Reagan's presidency. Ronald Reagan reached the point where they kept it under wraps as long as they could. But Reagan was suffering from advanced senility, or more like Alzheimer's. And so he was like a puppet president. They propped him up and whatnot and tried to hold on to the last little bit before the term was up. But having an individual like that had those kind of mental problems remember, he's got the codes, the nuclear codes, the whole 9 yards. So they had to look at what can we do quickly to get him out of this. And so the 25th Amendment was one of the, in fact, that was the final decision, was to apply the 25th Amendment. I didn't get a chance to read enough to see what happened with that. But it was explained that it would have to take a long period of time, because when you've got an emergency situation like that in the presidency and anything is liable to jump off, you've got to be able to have some action that you can take from an emergency standpoint. So I don't know what that is other than the 25th and just what the powers of the 25th really are when you strip it down.
Let me move around a bit. Maurice Chase, unmute yourself. What's been your perspective? You've dealt with, among other things in your career, security in terms of keeping inmates in check. Could
yeah,
you
that's
see
true.
yourself?
A lot of
yes,
okay. a lot of points were. Go ahead.
Now, could you imagine yourself being that lone security guard, holding off that mob of people with a baton without pulling out whatever's on your hip? I mean, could you picture yourself in that position, Mr. Tates?
Well, Donnie, that's a good point. That's what I do. I retired from Clifton T. Perkins, the great Clifton T. Perkins. It's a criminally insane, they call it a hospital, but it's a jail. And when a person decides they're going to attack you and they're mentally ill, or they have objective of harming you, and you could find yourself fighting for your life, or you could find yourself like that gentleman in retreat. He was in retreat the whole time. At no time did he seem like he really had in his mind the authority to fire his weapon, protect who was in the room, or defend himself. Once again, to fire his weapon, protect someone that was in the room, or defend himself. At no time was he trying to do any of those things, just retreat. I mean, it was some points that were just made where it's like, cool. I mean, that's what we're talking about. The dictionary definition of looting is stealing, taking something that doesn't belong to you. I mean, these persons literally came in, taking chairs out the windows, some of the dumbest stuff. You got steps all around the building, but they climbing up the side of the wall. The hell dumb is that? There are steps. They want to put on a grandstand by climbing up the side of the wall. They're making all kind of bad decisions. One point that I would like to say, I address mental illness because that's my field. That's one thing that was just touched on, and thank you for bringing that up. This person is literally in charge of the United States of America. He's mentally ill, and he has the power to press buttons and start wars. I mean, this person, no matter how you see it, y'all, I'll go to the next person. Stop thinking that everybody that's crazy, you know what I mean, looks different. They have two eyes, a nose, and a mouth like everybody else, and mental illness. We're talking mentally ill. The last point is they literally escorted these people out of this building after taking siege to it with "Have a nice day. Please stay in an orderly fashion. Watch your step." Come on, man. Come on. The last point is just like he said, who knows if this was actually an attempt to find out our weaknesses for a later demonstration. And if they were trying to find out if we were weak, they found out. Thank you for my time.
Thank you for your patience. All the way from Atlanta, my Morehouse brother. What are your thoughts? You have to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself.
I agree with a lot of the things you guys said, but I also believe that it was a planned breach of security. That taking of that building, somebody let the door open. Somebody kept it soft around there. Someone had already called, from what I understand, someone had called and asked, "Do you need help?" And that somebody were the four, what they call them, the 4 3 letters. FBI, CIA, they actually called to find out if they need help. Somebody responded with, "No, we don't need your help." So these people were left out there. They didn't even have a police force. They were just the security in the buildings, the federal police officers that were in the building. That's not that same guy that shot my brother in the back walking into the car. We saw those trained guns on that door. Under any circumstance, those guns should have gone off when those doors started opening. When things were being breached, they should have fired those weapons. They didn't fire those weapons.
Let me go to you, Jerome, Reverend Jerome Stevens. How come no one was shot? Other than, I mean, that one woman. And how many people have been killed? I'm getting mixed reports.
Five.
Donna and the rest of the panel, because I am not a law enforcement person like Mr. Tates, I can't say why nothing was fired anything. As I indicated, we was aware that some things could happen because of the conversations and statements that was made by the president. I don't understand, and I agree it was almost like, as I indicated previously, they treated these thugs, these terrorists differently if they had looked like me. They did not, like you say, even with the gentleman retreated. He did not, he didn't say a word. He just kept running backwards. He did not fire his gun, a warning shot. He did not do anything. He just kept retreating. It was clearly saying, let them come on and have a good time. And when they finish, y'all escort them out and let them say and be nice to them. I don't want y'all hitting them like y'all, if Jerome was coming, beat him across his head. But these are my folks. Don't beat them. And that's what happened. And everybody, as I mentioned earlier, President-elect Biden indicated the same in his statement of the incident. If it was someone else, people of color, this would have been a bloodbath. Weapons would have been fired. But it also goes to show that what happens as it demonstrates once again the double standard that we're policing in our country. No matter what, even if it was one-on-one, and if it was someone who do not look like Jerome, they are more polite. Sir, are you okay? Sir, be calm. Be calm. You don't have to be too loud. They say what they say. They watch their tongue. They do not get loud. They do not speak in a bullying like manner. They just we was all people of color, particularly, was pretty much not in awe, was just so much scared, not only about the overdose or the attempted coup, but how the people, the protesters or whoever you want to call them, how they was treated so differently from other demonstrations that occurred early on in this year.
Let me make a point too. Let me make a point. This guy.
Kavette, you wanted to pose some questions here?
Well, I'm agreeing with what Jerome is saying. I really want to hear what Robert has to say first. Can you go ahead, Robert, please?
Yeah. All I want to say is this guy right over my shoulder said something profound once. The chickens have come home to roost. We have seen this before. Recently, we saw this when we saw that guy Dylan, whoever Roof, get taken to the McDonald's or Burger King after he shot those folks in that church. That's an example. That's a precedent that was set. Nothing was done, so we see this happen again. Guys getting shot in the back. Nothing happens.
How about
however you look at it?
How about Kyle Rittenhouse, who shoots the two protesters and then walks right by the police officers who are standing right there and they don't do anything?
Yeah.
He was the last person.
Okay, so then the
kid who runs with the automatic weapon saying, I shot somebody, I killed, and he can't get their attention.
Yep.
Because they don't want to see him. So then the question becomes, who do we hold responsible for this? We've heard about these resignations from, the chief and police, the Capitol Police, and somebody else is resigning. Okay, fine, they're resigning at their convenience in a couple of weeks. Nobody was fired immediately. What are the consequences that we should see for something like this? And how do you hold folks accountable?
I think his name is the president. Hold him accountable first. Yeah. That's where it starts.
Giuliani, Trump's son, these were the three that were speaking to that crowd further removed down the road, down the streets, and incited that crowd to storm the Capitol with the understanding that the president was going to be there with them, and he wasn't. So he put everything in motion. Giuliani was quoted as saying, let's call it war or some statement.
Combat, I think, is what he said.
Yeah. He used a terminology or some statements to incite further an attack mode mindset. So, and then I've been seeing some of the charges. I think they had, I saw about 68 or 87 that had been charged out of the crowd and through pictures and that kind of thing. And they were basically being charged with curfew violations and trespassing.
So then who do you reach to in order for there to be a more stronger consequence in this case? I mean, you've noted some really notable people. First of all, Giuliani, okay, he's here in D.C. egging them on, and Trump's son is egging them on, and so the president is egging them on. Who do we hold responsible, and how do we hold them accountable? Because what I heard this morning was that based on the 25th Amendment, the president's cabinet is the ones who would have to hold him responsible for that, and they're not
vice president in the cabinet,
right? So they're not going to hold him responsible for that. So what are the next consequences that are available to be put in place? So that we see
we listen to the person who has spoken up. We listen to the person who has spoken up, and that person so far has been Nancy Pelosi, and she was the one. She has gone over the fact that the next move that we do, it has to be impeachment. Even though it's 13 days, it has to be pursued. Even if they get it on the 12th day, it has to be said this guy was impeached twice.
Right.
And it puts the onus on senators, Republican senators that are there. Are you going to block it this time? With all of this that has gone on, sedition, unauthorized access, and a litany of other things. One thing that I like that she did say, she says we're going to pursue, and if she didn't say this, we'd be going after the Democratic Party. She's going to pursue everyone to the fullest extent of the law with face recognition software. They've already identified the guy that was sitting at her desk. I've seen him, seen his name. The attorney that was out there, with posing out there. He's already lost his job. The insurance company that he's an attorney for, they've already fired him. There's another attorney that was out there. He's already lost his job from his firm. Slowly, what we need to do is keep account of it. Each person. What are you saying?
Reverend Stevens, do you have any idea who that body was? Who was that powerful person that shut down the DC police, the National Guard, and the Capitol Police, and other military or civilian organizations to include the FBI?
Yep.
Who was the one that gave that power play call and said to everybody, stand down? Stand down.
We don't need you.
I could not say who that person was at this point. However, a person who has that authority because of the DC status is the president of these United States. As indicated from the governor of the state of Maryland, they were ready and willing to come immediately, but they could not come without the authority from the Department of Defense. In other words, the president has to say so. Come on in, bring in the troops. Like the call was made to them from the CIA and the FBI. Do you need some help? I will say no. They said no. Now for January 20, they have already put in other protocols, putting up fencing and everything to be on the lookout. They be more proactive than what they have done. If you think about when the Black Lives Matter, all of this was in place, but none of that was in place for January the 6th. So the person who ultimate responsibility when you have situations like that, even when we had a situation in Baltimore, Maryland, the troops could not come in unless the mayor of Baltimore City said come. So at that point, so you look at on a wider scale for this scale, that person was the president of these United States of America who had the authority to say, sign off, let's bring the people in, we're in trouble, we need more help.
Okay, so now you said that the mayor of Baltimore would have been the person responsible for having those troops come in.
No. What I was saying,
no, not for this situation, but if it had happened in Baltimore, the mayor would have been the person to be responsible for bringing them in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so then we're skipping over a couple of authorities in order to get to the president. So then my question is, what about the mayor of DC? Does she have the power to be able to call in those kinds of troops?
She does not have the power she has the power to request, but not the authority to make the action. Because DC is in a different situation. It's not federal day. So therefore it was a different situation. She had wanted that. Right after that she had a press conference and all of that. She had wanted that, and she was denied.
The governor would have to be the one, and I might be wrong on this, but I would think that the governor would be the one that would have to call out the National Guard.
Well, the governor for any state is the one who's responsible for the local militia or National Guard, and therefore Steny Hoyer from the state of Maryland did call Governor Hogan on his cell phone, asked for help, and then of course his response: "We ready, but we cannot move until we have authority or be authorized to do so." And that authorization had to come from ultimately the president of the executive office, which controls the Department of Defense.
Wow.
Kaveh, I want to go back to something you asked earlier, because I want to add a point. We were talking about who was responsible for this.
Yes.
And I think you can deal with that on the level of who's responsible for the event as it happened, and then who's responsible going back, even back to the November 3rd election. I think one of the points that needs to be emphasized is that there was a group of people, starting with the president, all the way down his entire group of supporters throughout the Republican Party, who sold a bill of goods to people, giving people the impression that this election was going to be won by President Trump when it had been lost. And one after the other, they said the courts were going to do it. They said Congress could do it. They said the state legislatures could do it. They said Vice President Pence could do it. And they told lies to their supporters. They ginned people up to believe that something could happen that couldn't. Then they collected them in D.C. Trump spoke to them half an hour before Congress was going to meet, and then they let them loose. What did they think was going to happen?
Well, it's obvious they were planning for this. Took a lot of planning and time and organization to get that many people to come down, and then for them to have the freedom that they did to move in the way that they did. It's obvious that there were some manipulations behind the scenes. And that's what we're drawing out here, even talking about who's responsible for making the decisions to hold back on the authorities who would have been able to prevent this. If there had been, more lives lost, including those in Congress, because someone had gone in with guns, similar to a school shooting, then maybe this would be taken more seriously. But because of the way that it seems to have been planned, they're not taking it with as much weight as they possibly can, whether it's in the media or even just in the way that they're handling passing down the consequences. And that's the challenge that we're finding. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think the one silver lining to this cloud, and there are very few silver linings to this cloud because this is awful. The one silver lining is that I genuinely believe this has completely destroyed President Trump's influence within his own party. I think he's done. I think there's support in his own party to get rid of him in the next 12 days. But even so, I think they are looking to get beyond him. I don't see him as a viable candidate in 2024 or beyond. I think he has cooked his goose within the party. And I think while I would have preferred that none of this had happened, if there's anything good that came out of this, it's that.
Well, what do you think about his comments last night when he stated that this is only the beginning?
Well, it's atrocious. It's awful. But the rest of the party, look, Trump is always going to have his core group of support. But that's a very, very narrow, small group of people who will follow him off the hill no matter what. There are a lot of people in the Republican Party who supported him out of political expediency, who now no longer, and Reverend Stevens can speak to this better than I can. He sees these people day in and day out. They're not true believers. They would prefer not to have to deal with Trump, but they have no choice but to deal with some of his supporters. So they toe the line because it's politically expedient for them to do so. Well, they've been given an out. And it looks like a lot of them are taking it.
Mm-hmm.
Reverend
Trump won't survive the Southern District of New York, the state of New York. He's not going to survive that.
Reverend Steve.
They don't see the executive immunity. They look at things differently, and they've been handed the Mueller investigation with all the information, all the financials.
From a legal perspective, I'll go you one further than that. Even if he somehow contrives a way to pardon himself or to resign and have Pence pardon him, there are state charges that are being investigated in New York that fall outside the scope of the federal government. And a pardon at the presidential level only applies to federal charges.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's where I'm going with this. He can't survive that. He can't survive the state of New York.
We have someone online, Marcus Murchison. He writes, hold the members, president, and all involved in this election responsible. The level of threat was assessed a minimum, meaning that the police force that protects the Capitol has a racism and bias problem. They need to purge the force of white supremacists. The Capitol Police Chief Stephen A.'s son is the most accountable, responsible person. It was his job to secure the members' property and visitors to the Capitol. The mission of the U.S. Capitol Police is protect the Congress and its members. Mr. Tates, what does that mean to you?
My wife just sent me something to tell me to ask an address. Was there supposedly some pipe bombs found? Did we hear anything about that?
Yeah.
Yes, there were bombs found in the Capitol.
That's not spontaneous.
Wow. She said, I wanted to bring that to the floor real quick there. She said, we're not talking about the person getting shot. We're not talking about a bunch of things. But now she said, nobody's addressing the fact that these people came armed with pipe bombs. They came with mass destruction equipment. So, I mean, for them to get that close, that if y'all remember back in the day over at the White House, remember they would shoot you when you come up to the gate? Somebody tried to climb the fence or something, they got shot. And how these people up close putting down pipe bombs? I didn't hear anything about the pipe bomb.
But that's why they're saying this is obviously someone on the inside involved with allowing this to happen. When you see those officers on video opening the gates and welcoming these people into the Capitol, there's someone behind it who's making it happen. So they allowed this to happen for, whatever purpose. Maybe it was to, conduct an initial run and see what they could get away with and how they would be able to get through the process. We don't know. But what we do know is that the president has very boldly stated that this is only the beginning. And so that indicates that we all need to be prepared to protect ourselves and to brace ourselves for the next incident.
Reverend
I have
Stephen,
a question.
have you
I
heard
have a question.
anything about,
Where are the guys who like hanging out at Black Lives Matter
about
and
there
Antifa
being an
or the anarchists? Where are they?
United
Why
States
didn't they
Well,
show
that's
up?
who was doing this.
is
The
in
anarchists are the
office,
ones who did it.
and he declares war. And there used to be a thing that was batted around that a sitting president cannot be removed from office during wartime.
Absolutely.
Is there any validity to that statement?
I cannot confirm that, sir. I don't know that policy, but let's be clear. This been brewing for 4 years. Trump has been, and he's been getting away with it. Once again, people on both sides of the aisle have allowed him to go and say just about anything he want to say, knowing that it was false, untrue, no data to support anything. Y'all keep in mind that Trump, for good, bad, or indifferent, he's no more than a marketer, a salesman. He's been selling Donald Trump for 4 years, and it's not been a good brand, but he's been selling it over and over to a group of people who have been purchasing, if you will, if it was on the shelf. And those people, or those followers, many of them came to the Capitol on January 6th. When you let things be unabated, it doesn't get better. It just get worse. It get worse. So that's the problem with this administration. It got worse every year. It got worse. Donnie, I'm sorry. I have to get on another call, and I've enjoyed this, and I look to see everybody. Donnie has all my contact information. Whenever he called me, I try to make time for him.
Reverend
Thank you
Stacy,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
We had a comment from Larry Collins early on in the show, and he wrote, police, and he's a regular viewer of this show. Thank you, Larry Collins. That's my homeboy from Moreland Avenue. Police and or military are usually involved in a coup. Police didn't exactly get involved, but they sure were rioter friendly. Morocco, your thoughts? Tates, Neil Dubois, Quebec, Robert Scott.
We've seen the photographs of the Capitol Police taking pictures,
a selfie.
With the terrorists inside the Capitol.
Wow.
This really, now what it is too, besides the obvious, this is also a very poignant example of white privilege. That is primarily what we saw taking place there.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why no one else could have done that.
Right.
Yeah.
No one else could have done that and walked away with their lives.
So I have a question for you, Mr. Tate.
With a pistol on his hip.
From a mental health perspective, what is it going to take in order to change the thinking of those who are in the process of this? I mean, those who have control in those positions. Does it mean just completely eliminating the entire force, firing everybody, and going through a new rehiring process? What can we do from a mental health perspective to help people to make sure that we have a mentality of keeping us safe in these kinds of positions?
Well, to me, a starting point is addressing these things by calling them what they are. I mean, I'm an armed security guard, a card carrying, gun wielding person that you pay. Someone is a terrible thing to say, but that's why we're here. Should have been shot. I mean, when they start taking over and pipe bombs, that's what you brandish your weapon for. That's when you discharge your firearm. That's what we're paid to do. I'm sorry that it happened. I'm sorry that, people can lose their life, but that's what they're paid for. The next thing is we address everything by downplaying it. You're bipolar, you're borderline, you're all these things we come up with answers. Y'all know all of us put a little bit of age. It was crazy. If you saw the spaceship and it swung your hand in the air, we call people crazy. Until we address situations and these entitled people and tell them what they are. I mean, if you look back, you're thinking back about Ronald Reagan. I always say about Ronald Reagan, at least he was broke. I mean, Ronald Reagan was a poor president. He didn't come up rich or nothing like that. He self-made millionaire or whatever he was. But as someone pointed out earlier, Mr. Trump is playing as an actor all his life. He's been doing this. He's been tricking people all his life. Hit him in the face, grab him by the vagina. He said he's brandished all these terms and stuff to people that we've addressed and act like we glamorize them and stuff like that for a while. So how are we shocked that somebody else fell prey to following this mentally disturbed idiot of a man?
We have another comment from Marcus Murchison. He's at on the job, so he can't comment public. This was a national security threat. Foreign adversaries around the world watched as the first branch of government of these United States was trampled during a legislative session. This showed our adversaries the ease of taking control of the U.S. Capitol. There are two situations here: the role of the president and the readiness of the U.S. Capitol Police. Morocco Coleman.
You better believe that there were some foreign actors embedded in that crowd yesterday. You better believe that some of the the Proud Boys and some of the skinheads and some of these subterranean organizations, they infiltrated and they hid in their well, and one guy just happens to get caught and he's got 10 pipe bombs and weapons. So my military mindset is telling me it was so obvious they walked right in the door and didn't worry about getting caught with the bombs, didn't worry about getting caught or shot. And so now I'm worried in this next 12 days that possibly was a dry run. And if it was some foreign actors in there, and also some of these subterranean groups embedded in there, we don't know what's coming. And if it does go down, let's say something catastrophic happens in 11 days from now, we'll be saying, wish we had gone and taken that 25th Amendment or the impeachment or whatever and gotten him out of there with the quickness, because we saw it coming. That's what Brother Tate was saying. You look back on his history, this is nothing but a repeat over and over again of him pushing the envelope with a con game. He's a con man. He's a grifter. And it's all about that money. And while we're distracted over here, he's making a move over here.
We only have a few minutes left, but Neil, I wanted to get your perspective internationally. What is the world thinking of the United States right now? You're a world traveler.
I'm from South Africa originally, and I follow a lot of international people online. And I saw a statement yesterday from the president of Zimbabwe, a country we have placed sanctions on because of what we perceive as a lack of civil rights within the country. And he released a statement that basically said, based on everything that just happened in the United States, who are you to judge us? Lift your sanctions. How dare you criticize other countries after what we all saw around the world today? And I think there's it cannot be overstated how much what happened diminished our standing in the world. It's been a steady decline for the last 4 years, but what happened on Wednesday was really dramatic. And there's a sense that it's going to take us a long time to recover from it. But in addition to that, I want to circle back to something Morocco just said, and I'm going to, I'll play devil's advocate and take a slightly different perspective, and I'm curious to get the panel's thoughts on this. I am in favor of President Trump leaving office 10 minutes ago. I think he's unworthy of the office. I think he's a danger and a threat and a risk, and I think 12 days is an incredibly long time for him to remain in office. But this is the devil's advocate part. If the fear is not so much what he will do, but what his supporters could do, I think there's an argument that you let him see out his term and then shove him to the curb. Because I think the sense of injustice that they feel, and I'm not justifying anything that they did, and I think we should crack down on them, but if the fear here is that his supporters are going to act irrationally, getting rid of him early may exacerbate rather than diminish that. If the fear is what he's going to do, which is a fear I have, get him out now.
I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent, but I think the best point made is to fry all of the people that got caught, that are seen, that are considering themselves on the front line. That front line should be baked, fried, deeply.
I agree.
As deeply as they, as swiftly as they go after Trump, they should be fried. So that if the other ones do get upset about it, as they are getting upset and as they are breaching security in other places, their asses are being shot down.
Yeah, how is this to sort of, and I don't disagree with that. You know, Donnie used the word sedition earlier, and it's been thrown around a lot lately, but how else do you describe a group of people who stormed the U.S. Capitol for political purposes, for, you know, with the intent of overturning an election? What other word in the English language applies other than insurrection and sedition? Those are capital crimes.
Well, there is a sedition act that they feel that's supporting their efforts.
Well,
yeah, the sedition, they're like, yeah, cool, yeah, it is sedition.
Robert,
hell yeah. When it gets down to this point where you feel that your rights are being, you know, that disrespected, yeah, we'll do the sedition act. That's what they're thinking of doing. That's why I say you move swiftly on them.
I wish them the best of luck presenting that in a court of law. I can tell you I'm pretty confident how that's going to play out for them. But that goes back to the point I was making earlier. Why did they think that? They believe that. They believe they've been wrong because people they trust have been selling them a bill of goods. They've been lying to them since the November 3rd election by telling them something that just isn't so. That's why they were as angry as they were, because people kept telling Trump won, don't worry. The courts will take care of it. Congress will take care of it. The state legislatures will take care of it. Mike Pence will take care of it. None of it was true. And they kept getting them fired up and fired up and fired up. And so people do feel aggrieved, and they do react like this. I'm not excusing it, but it didn't arrive in a vacuum.
We have two more comments online. One from Ron D. Griffin. If the president's original team had been in place, he would have succeeded in this effort. Kellyanne Conway, Stephen Bannon, Roger Stone. Marcus Murchison writes, the members of the cabinet that have resigned in the last few days have not shown any courage. Great. These grandstands have allowed them to avoid the responsibility of exercising the 25th Amendment.
Mulvaney is one of them.
They're trying to look like, you know, I've been trying to tell them for the last 3 years something was wrong with him.
His chief of staff just did that. His chief of staff just did that.
I was outnumbered. And so now that there are a few other people and the whole world is seeing just how crazy he is, I'm resigning with 2 weeks to go. I'm resigning as if the show, see, they don't want the same thing to happen to them that's going to happen to those folk that invaded the Capitol. See, they see the thing closing in, and they're seeing a shift change, a paradigm shift here with the thinking of the American people, and realizing what they have been a part of creating for 3 years, hanging with this guy.
They should be branded as traitors.
All of a sudden, you're resigning now. Yeah, I'll say that they're brave. They're brave enough to think that we're stupid enough that we don't see what they're trying to do.
Rats escaping a sinking ship.
Exactly.
Any final thoughts?
2044 is among us right now. 2044 is right now.
We never talk much about it, but can you imagine the coronavirus running through that little scene that they had thousands of people running around with no mask right next to each other, hooping and hollering?
We're still waiting 2 weeks to find out. When it's all over and we start seeing them, as we're prosecuting them, we're going to prosecute them sitting up in hospitals or somewhere.
Well, not just that. Think about, Maurice, from a security point of view, how big an idiot are these people running around committing crimes? They have a built-in way to protect their identity by just complying with CDC guidelines. And they're such morons and idiots, they don't even wear the mask that could block their faces.
Right.
I'm still
lawfully cover their faces up. Lawfully cover their faces up.
Right.
It just shows
right.
And he still can blow that dog whistle and get the next wave of those fools that we saw yesterday.
I agree.
Just like we say, mental illness. Back to the term, mental illness. You got a mask on, you take it down so everybody can see you. You got a legal way of hiding yourself, but you take your mask down so everybody can see you. You idiot, you.
We have a comment from Richard McLaren and may beg a question. Hence is the problem. We Democrat and minorities are too damn soft, forgiving, and understanding. I'm scared for Democratic because we always want to play fair and follow the rules. And secondly, we do not stand together like Republicans do. So here's a final question.
I agree.
What does this mean for the Democrats? What does this mean for the future of the Republican Party? Anyone?
Get tough.
You got to stop saying "kumbaya" and reaching across the aisle. Now they've shown you what's on the other side of that aisle. When they had the power, they showed you and exacted their power. And now we're going to go over here to them and say, well, I think y'all, some of you got caught up in there and you just had no way out. No, we've got to get some backbone and we've got to stand tall.
I agree with that, but let me add something, and I'm actually going to take a slightly different take on this too, Donnie, because I've given this a lot of thought over the last few weeks from a legal point of view. This was a massive stress test on our system, on the American system, on the American democratic process, right? And at the end of the day, going through this massive stress test, Joe Biden is still going to be inaugurated on January 20th. And I think we have to take a step back that while there were a lot of Republicans who were awful over the last 2 months, one of the main reasons, in fact, probably the only reason that the system worked is because of decent-minded Republicans in other states. Let me tell you who I'm talking about. Secretaries of state and governors in states that are controlled by Republicans, but that Biden won. If they had wanted to overturn the election, they could have. They didn't. Republican judges who were appointed not just by Republicans generally, but by President Trump dismissing legal challenges. Republican members of the Senate, forget the House. The House is a disaster. We can get rid of every single Republican in the House. But a majority of the Republican senators in the Senate, when push came to shove, voting to certify the Electoral College results. And the point I'm making is not to celebrate the Republican Party because they are not worthy of celebration. The point I am making is that the system would have collapsed if but for people on the other side who didn't step up and do their jobs, even though they didn't like the outcome. And I think that's something we have to acknowledge and recognize. Or
either they were afraid when they saw the power of the other 80 million people of us that voted and turned a redneck red state Georgia into blue, and then sent 2 senators up to the Senate. They had to also look at, they've got 77, that part of them we saw yesterday attacking the Capitol. But we have numbers and power too.
I agree.
Yeah. So now were they afraid of the power of the 80 that have not raised our fists, or was it that they felt that they're going to play the game?
And I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I can tell you as somebody who's been practicing law for almost 20 years and who has appeared in front of a lot of judges and federal judges, I believe to the core of my being that the overwhelming majority of them, whether they are appointed by Republicans or Democrats, care deeply about the law. They don't always come down on the same side of the issue. And a lot of times ideology guides decision-making. We see that on the Supreme Court all the time. But in cases like this, where the answer was so clear-cut, you had Trump-appointed judges throwing his cases out of court summarily because the legal arguments weren't there. And what I'm saying is that a true threat, that Trump was a massive threat to our system. But all it would have taken was judges on a federal bench who say, I don't care about the law. This is the guy I wanted to win. He appointed me to the bench. I'm going to forget about the law, and I'm just going to make sure that he can get through the legal process. And they didn't do that. And I think
Neil, you're addressing the 11th hour, the 12th hour.
Yeah.
Yep. I am.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock. They wasn't shit.
For 3 years.
They were complicit.
Yeah.
They were for it. As a matter of fact, what was being pressed on us was the most blatant form of white male supremacy that I've seen in my 57 years.
Yeah.
I'm from Baltimore, lived in Baltimore, and I live in Atlanta. And I've seen it. I've seen the world from here. I've traveled around the world. I've been in corporate America. I have a telecom background. This is the worst I've ever seen. And they were all complicit.
They just didn't turn in their resignations.
I am not excusing the party. They nominated and then voted for the single worst president that we've ever had in the Oval Office, who is an overt racist. And there is no doubt about that. And I am not excusing collectively the way the party has behaved, and they're going to have a lot to answer for. And you're already seeing some of that about what happens in a traditionally red state like Georgia that has now turned blue, and North Carolina is probably next over the next 2 electoral cycles, right? And there will be accountability for the party, and that is deserved. All I'm saying is the system could have collapsed, and it didn't. And I think if there's a cherry on if there's something to at least hold on to, is that one of the reasons it didn't collapse is because it required some level of bipartisanship.
The system.
I'm going to give you that level of why I still disagree with you.
The numbers of people that are dying from a virus that this same president allowed to spread because he said he didn't want it to upset and cause a panic with the people, which was BS. He was holding on for his own particular reasons. And so now the system is in collapse. We're hoping that people will take the vaccines. We hope that we can get a handle on this thing, but the genie is out the bottle. This thing now is starting to mutate. You can get the vaccine today, and tomorrow is a new variant of it. So this is the same group of Republicans for 4 years that you're talking about that stand tall now on the Supreme Court and stand tall in the gubernatorial offices. But as long as they were riding Trump's coattail and their states were getting money to put in their pockets and everybody was fattening up behind the grifter, the con man that was spreading the wealth around, and then he gives a stimulus, it's not going to the people. Millions of dollars are going to corporate America and to these same governors and et cetera. So the law is good, and I love the law, and I've been into the law for a little while. But there comes a time when you got to kick butt and take names. And that's where we are now. We got 11 or 12 days left. That guy still has the dog whistle, and he still has that cadre out there. And he's showing you that he's willing to burn down the house on the way out the door. So
and let me tell you,
on that, Morocco, no argument for me on that.
Yeah,
you're talking about the same guy that's been every ist, from racist to sexist to exorcist. You know, he's the worst that has been around. And we've had every reason, everybody in this country has had every reason in the world to denounce him. He could have been denounced on all those women that stepped forward. Those women, nothing was shaky about them. They all came forth and they had solid information. People came to the table from every corner, even the Steele dossier. What allowed him to slip was his masterful manipulation of white male superiority, because he got all of the people who supported him afraid that somebody was going to come in and take something from you. And those people that are going to come take it from you are Latinos, are blacks, are this people, that people. This is going to happen. This is the worst. I'm in the state where Kelly Loeffler is, and where Purdue is, and that guy Kemp, who just totally, nastily, just underhandedly undermined this black woman from the governorship. Historic. It would have been a historic move. She's an attorney. She loves the law just like you. But at one time, it was legal to enslave me. At one time, it was legal for you to suppress me. for you to hold things back from me. And what we're moved by right now is that ain't shit changed.
Hey, Robert,
The Black Panthers were talking about the same thing that Kaepernick was talking about, and that Black Lives Matters was talking about. And I was born in 1963.
Good deal.
My birthday's April 6th, 2 days before they killed Martin Luther King. Same old thing.
We'd like to thank you all, Morocco Coleman, Mr. Maurice States. We understand you got other things going on. Kivette Kane, Neil Dubo of Dubo Law. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll be back Monday through Friday with the Be More News Morning Show, 10 to 11 a.m. Thank you all for joining us, and have a very safe weekend.
Guys, take
care. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the weekend.
Talk to you all.
All right.